Hi, and welcome to this video, first of a series that's going to look at helping you be prepared for the exam. And for English, one of the key things that you need to know, and actually for any subject, you need to understand exactly what the mark scheme is and how to identify it. Okay, so we're going to look at the mark scheme for English. I am going to use the syllabus from CXC. All right, so I'm not using anything that I have made up. This is from CXC. This is a version that was revised in 2020. It is still applicable. Now, if you have a copy of this, it's actually very easy to get. You go on to CXC's website and you download it, okay? It does not cost anything. It should still not cost anything for you to get this information. And regardless of whatever subject that you're doing, I recommend that you try to get the syllabus, okay? So again, this is a mark scheme, and we're going to look at it for paper two in particular. And one of the reasons I want to look at paper two is because paper two is the paper that's got the most weighting. So you want to ensure that you understand exactly what's happening for this paper. Okay, it's a very crucial paper, and unfortunately, it is a paper that not a lot of students actually get much practice in, and that's a serious problem. You want to be able to have practice in your paper, and unfortunately, this is just not one of those. For the purpose of these sessions, or this video in particular, I am going to assume that you know what's in a paper too. I'll do another video where I actually do the structure or review the questions of paper two. But in this video, I'm just going to assume you already know it. Okay, so first question is going to be summary, and summary is marked based on to the understanding profile and the expression profile. So it's actually marked on both those profiles. And as you can see, you get 5 marks for, I'm just zooming in, you get 5 marks for that understanding, that's 5 content marks. And for the expression profile, it's a maximum of 20 marks. And those are further subdivided or further categorized as organization and mechanics. Now, in English, anytime you see mechanics, it's going to be punctuation, um, language, grammar, all those basic, yes, I said basic language skills that you should have. If you think you have issues with them, there are ways to solve them, but those are the basic skills. I'm saying they're basic because this exam is focused on your writing ability. Okay, so in summary, you are going to be awarded your marks based on the information that you are going to give in your summary, and your summary should not be more than 120 words. All right. If you write more because you're thinking, you know what, I'm really good, let me give them more information, they're not going to read past the 120th word. So just be mindful. So as we already saw, content is 5 marks, organization of that content is 10 marks, and language use/mechanics is a further 10 marks. Now we're going to look at what do each of these things mean, because it can be quite confusing to someone who's not really gotten familiar with this terminology. I urge you to understand this terminology. I urge you to sit through this video or click on the timestamp that's going to really help you. Rewind the section that you didn't get, because this is what will help you understand how to get the top marks in the exam. Because again, any exam you're in, you want to get top marks. So for content, they're going to look at your ability to um, hone in on the key pieces of information, right? That's what they're looking at for content. Can you hone in on the key pieces of information? And you're seeing the three sorts of criteria that they have for key pieces of information. And you have selection, accuracy, completeness. So do I say, so selection means the entire pic. You're selecting correct information. Accuracy is you're giving me accurate information, right? Those two are slightly different. So selection means, yes, I know there's information in the first line of the summary extract. Accuracy means I'm giving you the actually correct, the actual information. I'm not twisting it in any way, shape, or form. And completeness means I'm giving you the entire information in terms of main points, right? So this is actually the main point section. If you have not noticed, it's 5 marks by itself. This is the main point section. And if you are familiar with the paper, main points are 5 marks. People, please do your main points. It's really important for giving you extra marks and for setting you on the right track for the essay. For the summary, okay, our second criteria for content is achieving purpose and intent of the message. You must understand why the author, the writer, has written this piece of work. Why did they talk about whatever particular thing they've talked about, right? If you haven't gotten this, you're in trouble. In fact, letting you know this hint, in my classes when I teach this, I ask students to figure out purpose and intent of the message first, and then I ask them to collect main points. That's a great hint for you guys. Third, establishing a tone with roughly similar features. I want to say this should not be problematic. Okay, I want to say this should not be problematic only because you do not get a lot of variation in tone in terms of the extracts I've seen, even before the syllabus, even before this changing exam in 2018. I haven't really seen a variation in tone. Too much. I think there was more variation before the changing exam. Now we tend to get a lot of not necessarily neutral tone, but closer to neutral. It's not exactly any type of fully exaggerated tone, and tone is often conveyed with emotion, various types of emotions, or an absence of emotion. All right, but most of these you don't get a lot of emotional things because they're either opinions or they're full on expository pieces, right? Just plain information, right? So that's what you're going to look at for content. It sounds like a lot, but you would it's amazing how you automatically look at those three things when you're picking the correct information, right? Then we're going to look at organization of content. All right, it's one sentence, which I think it irks me a little bit. I think CXC could explain this a little bit, a little more clarity. All right, but I'm going to tell you with the clarity that I have what this really means, and just letting you know based on what information there is in this document, this now seems to be the summary section, and it would make sense because this is organization of content. You have already identified what you're going to talk about in your main points here. You're going to arrange them in a manner that makes sense in terms of sequencing. Sequencing is order, coherence. Let's make sure it makes sense overall, the way you've presented your information. Conciseness, because this is a summary. Conciseness means briefness. We are not writing a 10-page essay here. Okay, please don't write your 10-page essay. This is not the question for that. We want to get you as simple as possible, reduced word count, right? And then with sense of audience, where you understand who you're talking to. Is this an article that's addressing people who own dogs and how to take care of them, or is this an article addressing a first-time pet owner who has zero clue about how to take care of the pet but really wants a pet? That's a different audience. Again, you should kind of get this information in your head when you follow the content part. Okay, when you analyze and figure out your content. Then we're going to language use, which is more or less the last thing. So it's divided into two categories. Um, it's divided into two categories. We're going to look at structure and language first, and then we're going to look at accuracy of mechanics. So structure of language is going to be complete sentences. Don't leave the sentence hanging. Don't say the man did and leave it hanging. It's not a fully complete sentence. It must be fully complete in terms of the grammar and the meaning, right? Sentences have meaning as well. Sentences must be clear and meaningful, so that goes with completeness. They must be effective. There must be effective and appropriate transition between sentences. So they are linking sentences must make sense. It's even more crucial here because you don't have time to be adding your furthermores and moreovers and howevers that you all love as linking words. You've got to be very smart about it because you don't have words to waste in this. Your subjects and verbs must agree, please. Just rechecking your work and building in time to recheck your work can assist with this. Pronouns must agree with the antecedents. Yes, please. Let's continue to agree. And there must be consistency in the use of tense. Right? Don't start in the future and end up in the past. Okay? Stick to one tense. It makes your writing a lot more impressive. Impressive is the word that I think I can use. And then we're going to go on to accuracy of mechanics. So these are all the basic stuff. Don't leave out your full stops. Don't leave out your commas when there should be a comma, right? Don't leave out your question marks if you're using a rhetorical question. Don't leave out your capital letters for the names of places, especially if you see it capitalized in the passage. Do not leave it out. Okay, really key. What I want you to look at as well is that note at the bottom. It says students who have performed incompetently in areas 1 and 2 will be limited to 4 marks in mechanics. All right. So areas 1 and 2 would have been area 1 is content, area 2 is organization of content. If you did really bad there, and I'm going to show you what incompetent is, you cannot get more than 4. They're not even going to give you more than 4. And I think that would be a very special case where you have great writing, but you just totally suck at this. But you're not they're not even going to give you the mark for writing to pull you up. So you really need to work at this. All right. So this is what the first question looks like. We're going to move on to our second question on this paper. Before we move on, I totally forgot that I would show you this. This is the actual grid that an examiner teacher is supposed to use to help you, um, not to help you. Well, ultimately, we'll help you if you get the marks, okay? I think you'll understand that. But this is what we'll use to mark you. This is on page 138. I think that's 138 of the English mark scheme. This is for summary. I will do another video where I actually go in depth into this because the video will be very long if I decide to explain each and every one of these. But here you will definitely see where there's an area that's marked incompetent, competent, and on top it's superior. Okay, superiority. So we will look at that in another video. We're definitely going to go on to our second question right now. Okay, so this is our second question. I always forget what CXE officially calls this question. I always call it the informative, and I prefer to use the word informative because this is about giving accurate data. All right. This question 2, as well as question 1, fall under the same umbrella of expository work because expository is about just giving actual information. All right. So in a summary, you're just going to give information on that you saw. You're going to take that information, reduce it to its smallest possible coherent um, version, and that's what you're going to reproduce. You're just regurgitating the information. All right. Here, you're going to do the same thing, but it's a bit more creative. All right. So let's make sure we understand exactly what we're getting into. So we have both the understanding and the expression profile. Again, it's 10 for understanding and 20 for expression. Right? As you see, again, content is under understanding, 10. And for organization, language, and mechanics, that's 10 each. Well, 10 organization, 10 language slash mechanics to give you 20 under the expression profile. All right. So I think you're seeing a trend already with these questions. Um, they will be awarded. Well, we saw how they were awarded. What I want you to see is how content works. Content is really interesting in this question, right? So they're going to judge how adequate you are, how good you are at answering this question, and that's what content does for you. Okay, so when we're looking at content, you will see that we have format and conventions, relevance and clarity, accuracy, completeness, appropriateness. So the accuracy, completeness, appropriateness, it's nearly the same as with question 1, and you get 4 marks for that. All right, so this section gets subdivided. I believe it's the only section. It's the only criteria in the paper that gets subdivided with separate marks like this, right? So you must ensure that you pick accurate, complete, appropriate information, right? You must ensure that your information is relevant and clear. It's not going to cause confusion. If I read something and it makes me more confused, you can't get full marks, right? And that they follow the format and conventions of whatever formatting they've asked you for. So letter, email, report, that's where that portion should go. All right. I always like to point out the fact that format is 3 marks, right? All the format crazy people, please note it's 3 marks out of 30, okay? Then we have organization of content, arrangement of information with regard to sequencing, coherence, conciseness, and sense of audience. So you have that same information, nearly the exact same sentence as in the first question. This is because you actually have a lot more freedom, even in terms of making sure your work is completely coherent. All right. So, this is actually really, really key to get your 10 marks. And language usage is going to be the same thing that we saw. So, the same information you heard me recap um, for question one, it's the same information that's here. They just added apostrophes and semicolons and hyphens. Please don't think you don't need apostrophes, semicolons, and hyphens um, in terms of getting your word correct for any of these questions. And that is only if they apply. If you're writing sentences that don't need apostrophes, semicolons, or hyphens, that's okay. If you write sentences and there's no need for a question mark, that's okay. But if you do need them, you need to put them in. All right. And that's all that is. Make sure your punctuation is accurate. Okay. Here's your quick view of the actual rubric for question two. Again, we will look at this in more detail in a separate video. Okay, so now we come to one of my favorite types of writing, the question three, question four short story. This is fully under expression. There is no, there are no marks awarded for content in this, so this goes um, fully 100% into your expression profile. All right, and the expression profile is the largest profile. So you want to still make sure you do really good at this to improve your chances of getting a higher grade. Okay, now, there is techniques and tactics to writing short stories. Eventually, I'll have a video out about that. I'm actually sharing that with the students who will enroll in either my crush course for English past paper practice that starts in Jan 2024, and some of those hints will be for those who enroll for our free membership on my website. You'll find the website below, right? But there, let me tell you something. You need to plan for this, and that's what I'm saying. You need to plan. All right. But let's get into the criteria. So first off, we want to ensure that our story has content. So you see, content is still a part of this here, and content and relevance of a story. And when you say content and relevance, it's to the story idea, right? Story idea related to a story idea related to the question. Sorry, related to whichever question you pick. Whether you pick the written prompt, which I think is normally question four, or whether you pick the pictorial prompt, which is normally question three, and of which CXE has normally produced rather questionable imagery. But either way, when I look at those things and I read your story, I must see that your information, what you put in there, is related. Okay, so you must have your storyline or plot with action structure, right? Think of this as the events that happen in the story. Even if you don't like to read and you like to watch TV, movies, series, anime is really awesome at plot. You will see elements of this. Is the story clearly developed? Can I read your work and get a story? Or am I left wondering what happened? Right? Right? I must know that there's a story. I must understand that you have links must be maintained appropriate to the choice of technique. Not really sure what they meant by that, but let's continue. Conflict must be satisfactorily resolved. This is a key point because every story must have a conflict. So I must have a resolution to the conflict. No resolution, no story. Action must be satisfactorily concluded, related to resolving conflict. Action and events must be clearly motivated. Why did the guy get a gun? Like, why? Right? I must have a reason that makes sense. And you will hear me say makes sense, and CXC does use a plausible, because please bear in mind this is not even what a short story is. This is way shorter than a short story. Short stories are not this word length. I call these mini short stories. They're actually called flash fiction. So you have to make sure that, because you have such a limited word count, I understand why everything is done. Okay? Setting must be clearly established. Are you in school? Are you at home? Is it Christmas vacation? Is it New Year's Day? Is it during the holiday? When is it? And that helps me orient as a reader into your story. Okay, so that's storyline and plot. Then we go into characterization. Characters must be believable. Okay, even if you have an alien, your alien must be believable. Okay, language must be consistent with who they are. Okay, the alien speaks English because they've monitored social media. Okay. See, so I gave you plausibility of character. Yeah, I did that. Any change in character, for example, behavior, personality, must be clearly established. Sorry about that. Why are they changing in character? Right? Did some tragedy befall them and they're now sad or more depressed? Did some great fortune occur to them, and are they more cheerful and content with life? So it must make sense. And characters must be sufficiently developed. Dialogue may be used, should be functional to develop character, action, and atmosphere. Don't put dialogue that does not serve a function. Okay, it's quite disappointing. Then we've got organization. Again, we see organization is a rather brief sentence. Details events must be logically and effectively sequenced. So think of this as beginning, middle, end, right? Beginning, middle, effective use of language. So we saw language already. And here they're talking about word choice. So this one is slightly different, because when we're doing short stories, we don't need to use plain, boring words. I'm not telling you make up words, please don't, but we want some more emotion. So a lot of people think, this is where I pull out my full vocabulary. No, this is where you pull out the words that are appropriate to the situation and the setting, right? So economic and lively use of language to create story elements listed under A and B, right? So they must show your language, must showcase your events, and they must showcase your character. And then, of course, we have all the basic stuff we saw before with use of language and accuracy of mechanics. And there's this lovely note at the bottom: if the student's response satisfies no criterion A, meaning your content sucks. Okay, I'm just gonna go back to it. Yeah, your content sucks. If I can't get anything for content, I'm not getting anything, then the response will be given 0 marks. Okay, a beautiful zero, and there's actually a reason for that. And basically, guys, as I said, this is a question that gets that's fully in expression. You want to make a really good attempt at this. And here is our scheme. You see, it looks a little different already, but you still have the 3 categories at the side, the 3 broad categories in terms of performance. Again, we will look at this in a different video. Okay, so this is another question that I absolutely love. I know some of you are getting a little triggered because I said I love it, but if you join my actual premium course and my freemium membership, online, you will understand why I say that, right? So here it's 25 marks, again, fully in expression for question 5, which is your argumentative, right? And a lot of people get confused with argumentative and what it's supposed to do. It's not just supposed to throw information at my face or throw opinions at my face. It's supposed to convince me, or it's supposed to give me some clarity in understanding your opinion. All right, so we have area 1. We have 2 areas for this particular question. They've changed it to areas. Okay, But two areas that they look at in terms of assessment. First off is content, argument, and comment. All right, and you see there's a lot. There's a lot of writing here, so we look at it. Selection of information details must be relevant to the argument. If we are here talking about best coffee houses or the best coffee, let's not talk about soft drink. Okay? All right. Let's if you're bringing soft drink into the argument, it must make sense a link. B, the argument must show a clear sense of the writer's awareness of audience. Okay, the writer must take the position of that the audience knows nothing about the topic or shares basic information about the topic. So you have to think about it. If you're talking about global warming, do you need to explain that? If you're talking about crime rate, do you need to explain that? You should not need to explain rising crime rate to your audience. That should be understood. But if you're doing alternative sentencing, that may be something new. That's a fairly new phrase. If you're doing biotechnology, genetically modified goods, food, you may need to to give some bit of an explanation for certain things. So you need to be aware of your audience. C, the writer must use a register and tone appropriate to the audience selected. Your register should be formal. Please do not think you're writing a casual essay for this exam. Okay, so we're doing formal, right? All academic writing should be formal. Yeah, and that's based on the questions that I see come and based on how they phrase questions. I've not seen a everything is I am argumentative. Everything is a bit more formal, so I recommend you go with that to be more impressive in the exam. Okay, plus formal tone, formal register works way better for a written response. All right, doing casual in a written response, it just doesn't work. Okay. D, the writer's purpose must be clearly linked to audiences. Where's my apostrophe S? To the audience's needs indicated in B1 and 2. That's where we were. So are we informing, persuading, and convincing of your point of view, or are we persuading, convincing? So that's what, do you need to give extra information, or do you just need to, hey, this is the point I have, let me convince you about my point, right? Supporting details that are used to develop. So I'm on E. Supporting details that are used to develop the argument must fulfill one or more of the following functions: expand, explain, illustrate by use of anecdotes, the main argument. So you must always be explaining your points, right? You don't just do your point and say, economic factors and just leave it as that. You have to explain why economic factors are relevant to your opinion. F. In illustrating, explaining, or expanding, the writer must use a range of strategies. For example, defining cause effect, meaningful comparison. That works really well, right? And that's how you would get your point across. All right? Tomatoes versus potatoes. Yay. And then in G, the writer must argue from a consistent point of view. I want you guys to stop here and think about this one, right? This is my hint here. Consistent point of view. If you've picked a point of view, don't switch it up. Please be very careful with this. It's something that happens to quite a few students, especially if you're unpracticed in this question. Somehow, some way, in despite picking your own argument, you start to help out the other side and shoot yourself in your foot with your own argument. Trust me, you will lose marks for that. Yeah? So you must argue from a consistent point of view. This means that the writer may anticipate the opposition's arguments, but must not contradict his or own arguments or position. I have my opinion about that. But like I said, don't shift from your point of view. Then our next area, I think this is our next area. Oh no, this is still in area one, but this is organization, logical development, and reasoning. All right. You see this word logic, you see this word reasoning. That's what you're using for this question. We're not going with emotions, we're going with logic. You've got to give me reasons. Yeah. It doesn't mean your reasons can't have an emotional base, but I need reasons. So the writer must present the details in a logical sequence, and conclusions must make sense. And this is how it works. And of course, our area two is almost the same. And this is what our last section looks like. All right, so I hope this video was very helpful. Please continue to follow this channel so that you can get more helpful information, freemium information for the exam. Bye bye.